Welcome, my name is Dr. Eric Landrum from the Department of Psychology at Boise State University. This is a brief Jing video about a one-way analysis of variance with a between groups design in SPSS. And so I want to show you how to do that following SPSS format. So here we go. So I've clicked over to an SPSS file, and to do a one-way analysis of variance, I'm going to click on Analyze, come down to Compare Means, and then into One-Way ANOVA. Now here I need to be able to identify my independent variable, my dependent variable. My independent variable goes here where it's labeled factor. My dependent variable goes here where it's labeled dependent list. And so I'm going to scroll down in my variables here, and I'm going to select as my independent variable political affiliation between very conservative to very liberal is my independent variable. In my dependent variable, I'm going to select the number of Facebook friends that a person has. Before I click on the analysis and click on OK here, I want to click on options. I'm going to need to know the means and standard deviations for my 5 political affiliation categories, because eventually down the road I'm going to write a sentence in APA format that's going to need those means and standard deviations. So I click on the options tab and then click on descriptive in this little dialog box. Click on continue and then click on OK. Alright, and a separate output file pops up, and you can actually save this, which is a good idea, on a USB memory stick for later printing, but you've got to print it from a computer terminal that does have the SPSS computer program installed. Alright, so here we go. And so this first table is descriptives, and so you can see my 5 political affiliations here from very liberal to very conservative. There's the N for each. Here are the means and standard deviations. Remember, this is the number of how many friends each person reported they have on Facebook. Here's the average, and here's the standard deviation, which is a measure of variability. So I would need all that information for the actual sentence I would write in an APA formatted paper, for example, in a results section. But here's my analysis of variance. Here's my actual summary table, and I'm interested in the between groups. That's going to be, was there a significant difference between these 5 groups, different political affiliations, with the number of friends they have on Facebook as the dependent variable. Now, you have to be able to read this table. This is really critical. So when you write a one-way analysis of variance sentence, there's going to be a capital F that's italicized. Here's the F statistic, F observed. That's going to be followed by degrees of freedom. And the degrees of freedom for this one-way ANOVA is 4 and 77. Now, you would write that in parentheses as a 4 comma 77. But when we say it, when we're talking about the analysis, we say an F of 4 and 77 degrees of freedom. Here's the F observed. You would report that to 2 decimal places. So our F would be 0.63. By the way, the F statistic must be positive. It could be 0, but it can't be negative. And so if for example, if you got a negative F, that means there's something wrong in the analysis. There's something wrong in your calculations. Now, the other thing we're going to need to know before we write a sentence in APA format is, do we accept or reject a null hypothesis? And so is there a significant difference, or are the differences due to random chance alone? If we go back and look at the means, we can tell that there's a difference. We can see a difference in the numbers of Facebook friends, ranging from very liberal folks having 131 on average to somewhat liberal having 226. So we know there's a difference, but the question becomes, is that a statistically significant difference? Could that happen by random chance alone, or are those differences so large that there's probably something going on there, and maybe this variable of political affiliation is affecting the number of friends one has on Facebook? Well, anyway, here's our F observed, 0.63. Here's our SIG, and so we're going to actually end up accepting the null hypothesis in this example. There is not a significant difference between one's political affiliation and the number of friends they have on Facebook. To reject the null hypothesis, we'd look here at the SIG, stands for significance, and we would reject that if that number were less than 0.05. It's 0.640, which means that these mean differences with this number of people could happen by random chance alone 64% of the time. We only reject a null when this could happen by random chance less than 5% of the time. And so for this particular one-way analysis of variance, there is no significant difference between the groups. And that'll do it for me on this brief Jing video on a one-way analysis of variance in SPSS.